The angels a book of the Bible tried to erase. We all know the story of Abraham, commanded by God to sacrifice his son Isaac. It's a cornerstone of faith, a profound lesson in obedience. But what if the whole idea wasn't God's to begin with? What if it was a trap, set as part of a celestial war by a demonic prince the Bible barely even mentions? There's an ancient Jewish text, one that some tried to erase, that names this powerful being. It details the terrifying saga of an angelic rebellion that triggered the Great Flood and pulls back the curtain on a hidden cosmic conflict. Today we're looking at the story of the angels the Bible tried to forget, and the prince of hostility who commands their evil spirits, an entity named Mastema. Section 1. The Bible's Lost Timeline. To find this story, we have to go outside the traditional Bible to a controversial book written in the 2nd century BCE called the Book of Jubilees. Sometimes known as the Lesser Genesis, it was considered sacred by several ancient Jewish groups, including the community that left us the Dead Sea Scrolls. In fact, fragments of at least 15 copies of Jubilees were found among the scrolls, a remarkable number that shows just how important this book was. Jubilees presents itself as a secret history of the world, dictated to Moses on Mount Sinai by an angel. It retells the stories from creation to Exodus, but fills in the blanks with shocking details you won't find in the canonical version. It names Adam's daughters, lays out a new timeline for the patriarchs, and, most importantly, reveals the full scale of a heavenly war that nearly destroyed humanity. For centuries, the complete version of this book was almost entirely lost to the Western world. It was preserved fully only in the Ge'ez language by the Ethiopian Orthodox Church, which is the only major Christian denomination that still considers it part of the Bible. Its rediscovery among the Dead Sea Scrolls proved it was an ancient and respected text, read widely during the Second Temple period. So why was it cast out? The answer starts with a group of angels whose crimes were so horrifying, their story had to be rewritten. Section 2. The War Before the Flood. The real story of the fallen angels. Genesis chapter 6 gives us a brief, cryptic summary. It says the sons of God saw that human women were beautiful and took them as wives. Their children were the Nephilim, described as mighty men who were of old, men of renown. Then the story just moves on to Noah and the flood. It's a bizarre and underdeveloped passage that leaves us with far more questions than answers. The Book of Jubilees doesn't just mention this event, it makes it central to the story of humanity's downfall. It says these sons of God were a class of angels called the Watchers. They were sent to earth to teach humanity righteousness, but instead, they abandoned their mission, corrupted by earthly desires. This wasn't just a small mistake, it was a conspiracy that unleashed chaos. Their children, the Nephilim, weren't just giants. Jubilees describes them as violent monsters who devoured everything, spreading corruption and lawlessness across the world. In this version, the Great Flood isn't just a punishment for human sin. It's a desperate act to cleanse the earth of the physical and spiritual contamination left behind by this angelic rebellion. A cosmic reset button to wipe out the monstrous children of the Watchers. The Watchers themselves were judged and bound in the depths of the earth. This is the origin story of the fallen angels, told not in a few vague verses, but as a detailed and terrifying saga. A story that was perhaps too detailed and too terrifying for later authorities. But the story doesn't end there, because their leader was still free, and he had a plan. Section 3. The Prince of Darkness has a name, introducing Mastema. In the canonical Bible, the source of evil can be an ambiguous figure. We have the serpent in the garden, and later, the character of Satan, which means the accuser or adversary. But in the Book of Jubilees, the Prince of Darkness has a name and a chillingly specific job. His name is Mastema, a Hebrew word that means hostility or enmity. But here, the story takes a sharp turn. In Jubilees, Mastema isn't the commander of the original Watchers. His authority is over the evil spirits of their dead children, the Nephilim, what we would now call demons. After the flood, God intended to imprison all these malevolent spirits. This is where Mastema makes his move. He approaches God and argues that if all the evil spirits are locked away, he won't be able to fulfill his purpose, to corrupt, tempt, and test humankind. He makes an audacious request: let him retain command over a portion of these demons. In a staggering moment, God agrees. Mastema is allowed to keep control over 1/10 of the evil spirits, while the other 9/10 are condemned. Their purpose on earth is to afflict mankind, lead them astray, and accuse them before God until the final judgment. This forgotten book offers a terrifying explanation for the persistence of evil in the world. It was permitted, overseen by a named entity whose very mission is hostility. This is a radical departure from the story we know. The idea that a demonic prince negotiated with God to maintain an army of evil spirits on earth is one of the most startling ideas in any ancient text. If you find this hidden history as fascinating as I do, hit that like button and let me know in the comments. Why do you think this version of the story was left out of the Bible? And don't forget to subscribe for more journeys into the stories that time tried to forget. Section 4. The real reason Abraham was tested. Now let's go back to Abraham and Isaac. In Genesis, the command is direct. God tested Abraham and said to him, "Take your son, your only son Isaac, and offer him there as a burnt offering." The horror of the story has always come from the idea that God himself is making this brutal demand. The Book of Jubilees completely reframes this scene. It doesn't claim God was uninvolved, but it says the idea for this horrific test didn't originate with God. It came from Mastema. According to Jubilees, after Abraham had proven his faithfulness for years, Mastema came before God and acted as a celestial prosecutor. He challenged God, saying, "Behold, Abraham loves Isaac his son. Bid him offer him as a burnt offering on the altar, and thou wilt see if he will do this command." This changes everything. It's no longer just a story about God making a seemingly cruel demand. It becomes a cosmic showdown, much like the story of Job. Mastema, the prince of hostility, argues that humanity's greatest champion is only faithful because his life is good. God then allows the test and gives the command to prove Mastema wrong, to show that human faith can withstand the most agonizing trial the Prince of Darkness can devise. By adding Mastema to the story, Jubilees offers a reason for the test, casting it as a pivotal battle in the ongoing war between heaven and the forces of evil. Section 5. The Forbidden Calendar, a war over time itself. The controversies in Jubilees don't stop with angels and demons. The book also pushes for something that seems mundane but was actually one of the most explosive topics of its day: a calendar. Jubilees passionately argues for a 364-day solar calendar. This calendar divides the year into 4 perfect quarters of 91 days, which means religious festivals would land on the same day of the week, every single year. The author of Jubilees presents this not as a suggestion, but as a divine law written on heavenly tablets. This was a direct attack on the religious authorities in Jerusalem, who used a lunar-based calendar to set the dates for festivals. By insisting that its solar calendar was the only one ordained by God, Jubilees was essentially accusing the entire temple system of being in error, celebrating holy days at the wrong times, and leading the people astray. This wasn't just an academic debate. It was a battle for control over the sacred rhythm of life. To follow the wrong calendar was to defy God's cosmic order. This radical claim was likely a major factor in why the book was branded as heretical and ultimately excluded from the Jewish and later Christian canons. So, why was the Book of Jubilees left behind? It presented a world far more complex and, frankly, more terrifying than the one we read about in the canonical texts. A world where an angelic rebellion unleashed demons onto the earth. A world where a named Prince of Darkness, Mastema, actively prosecutes humanity and even instigates God's most famous test of faith. And a world where the very measurement of time was a point of divine conflict. Was the Book of Jubilees suppressed because it was false? Or was it because it revealed uncomfortable truths about the nature of evil, the celestial order, and the foundations of stories we thought we knew? This ancient text suggests that for every story in the Bible, there might be another, darker version lurking in the shadows of history. The fact that a book once so revered is almost completely unknown to us today makes you wonder, what other secrets are still buried?